I guess I could say I'm a persistent advocate for things that I think need to be recognized or corrected. So, what that means in a few short words is quite often we'll have veterans who, friend of mine, for example, the Queen came to Canada one time. He was posted to Saskatchewan. He was escorting the Queen with a police car, and he had a heart attack at the wheel. He died before the police car hit a nearby hydro pole. He was never recognized for that. His name should have been on the Book of Remembrance in Ottawa. It never was. So I thought, well, I'll just call Veterans Affairs and get his name put on the Book of Remembrance. Well, it's not that easy. You have to be persistent and you have to be an advocate. You have to get perhaps other people to join in to support you. So I guess that's how I describe myself. If something needs to be made right, I'd like to take it on. And quite often, unfortunately, it's for people that have passed, but their families certainly are appreciative when they see the final product. I think in society, we need to do more of that. We need to bring our children up to be like that. If they believe something's wrong, then they need to say so. Because I'll say one thing about Canada, if something's wrong, you can certainly speak your mind. Well, when I was a little guy growing up in Windsor, Ontario, I sort of had in my mind I always wanted to be a cop. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I was a wanderer, so if my mother turned her head, I'd be gone. So the two times I was brought home by the police, the first time the cop put me on his motorcycle, and can you imagine if a cop did that today, brought you home on a motorcycle, no helmet on or anything, it'd be breaking news, I guess. I was, when I had the ride on the motorcycle with the cop there, I thought that was pretty neat. And then the second time I wandered away, the one cop that brought me home after he bought me an ice cream, which I thought, oh, this isn't so bad running away, you get an ice cream. He brought me home. Fast forward 30 years later, he turned out to be my future father-in-law. So that was always my goal in life, if you could put it that way, ever since I was a little guy to be a cop. Now, originally, when I was old enough to join, I thought I wanted to join the RCMP or OPP. But at that time, the waiting list was 6 months long. And when you're 16, 17 years old, 6 months seems like forever. So I went to the military recruiting center in London, and they said they were hiring military police. So I figured, okay, that's what I want. So that's what I did for 22 years, and I retired in 1995. Well, when I joined the military, I thought that was going to be my job for life. That's all I was ever going to do. I never thought that I would have done a lot of the things that I've done after I retired, because when I retired, my first job was working at Sun Life, doing investigations. And then I went to the university, and I've even worked for a funeral home. Another volunteer job I did, I don't know if I mentioned it, is I used to provide quilts, which were made by a group of ladies in Mississauga at the time. And the program's called Quilts of Valor. So any soldier that's injured would receive a quilt. So I would present these quilts. I even did one presentation for a police officer who was injured on duty, and he ended up being in a wheelchair. He was a police officer in Brantford, just outside Hamilton, and I presented him a quilt. But I guess what people most who are recipient of a quilt would often say is getting a quilt is better than getting any medal. Because the quilts were all handmade. Some of them were made specifically. The veteran would have a request, I was in the Air Force, so I want Air Force blues. So they would accommodate that. But the feedback you would get was over the top positive. They were just, a lot of them would come to tears, especially the more elderly veterans. I would say one piece of advice: be persistent in your beliefs. So whether it's the religion you believe in, your work ethic, be persistent and just keep pushing forward. And maybe your friends should be like-minded. Not that you have to turn down people that because they don't believe everything you say, but I would think if you have a core group of friends that are also persistent like yourself, and I find you'll have a happier life if you do that.